Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, What is the Customer-Centric Journey? I'm your host, Allison Crawford. How do companies define and execute the customer-centric journey? Who is a customer, and how should companies tie customer segmentation strategies to policies? Today, we'll delve into the steps to take to achieve excellence when working with your customers. Before I hand this over to Laura and Mark, there are a few things I want to cover with you. First, we're recording today's session and we'll post it on our on-demand webinar page. You can visit our website to listen to this or any of our other webinars. Additionally, we'll send out the slides to all attendees within 24 hours of the conclusion of the webinar. We encourage you to share these slides with others in your organization, and if you have questions, reach out to Laura or myself to set up a discussion. We also want to hear your questions about our findings. During the webinar, please post the Q&A or chat function to the left of your screen. We've left time at the end of the webinar to address all of your questions. And finally, we will be live tweeting the webinar, so if you'd like to join in the social media conversation, you can use the hashtag SCIWebinar and the Twitter handle @SCIInsightsLLC during the event. Now, let me introduce your speakers. Mark Hirsch is Director of Supply Chain Strategy for the Clorox Company. In this role, he is responsible for developing the supply chain vision and roadmap, being an internal expert on leading practices and industry trends, designing the processes and capabilities for globally integrated end-to-end supply chains, leading the supply chain analytics organization, and leading major initiatives across the company. Mark has had a 38-year career in the CPG industry and held multiple positions in both manufacturing and supply chain. Prior to joining Clorox, he worked for Heinz USA for 3.5 years in their Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania manufacturing plant, holding manufacturing assignments of increasing responsibility. Prior to Heinz, he worked for Campbell Soup for 1.5 years as an industrial engineering analyst in their Paris, Texas plant. Mark is joined by Laura Cesari, founder of Supply Chain Insights. Laura spent 9 years as an industry analyst with the Gartner Group, AMR Research, and the Altimeter Group, 10 years as a leader in building of supply chain software at Manugistics and Descartes Systems Group, and 15 years as a supply chain practitioner at Procter & Gamble, Kraft General Foods, Clorox, and Dreyer's Grand Ice Cream, which is now a division of Nestle. She founded Supply Chain Insights in 2012 to bring a new perspective to supply chain research and client advisory. As an enterprise strategist, Laura focuses on the changing face of enterprise technologies, and her research is designed for the early adopter seeking first mover advantage. So Laura, I know there's lots to discuss today about customer-centric, so without further ado, let me hand the presentation over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Allison. And this is part of our monthly complimentary webinar series, and what we're trying to do is really drive internal discussions about topics, and today's is on customer-centric. And we try to get an industry expert to join us in a panel and use our research as a backdrop. And I'm excited, Mark, to have you join us today. And Mark is representing the Clorox Company, and Clorox is one of the recipients of the Supply Chains to Admire Award for 2016. And for those of you who haven't read the report, this is our analysis of the period of 2009 to 2015 to look at companies that have driven the greatest improvement. So, Mark, congratulations. And when we talked about this, you said some of the effort was really driven by being customer-centric. Any thoughts at this point in time?
That's right, Laura, and thank you for the opportunity to share some of the things we're doing at Clorox. But you're correct. I think really be successful and win in the marketplace, you've got to be demand-driven, and you've got to be customer and consumer-centric and do that well.
Well, and I'm going to give a little backdrop to the audience, and then Mark's going to share his story. And, you know, when people talk to me about being customer-centric or being demand-driven, I kind of push back and I say, customer-centric and demand-driven are like close cousins. They're overlapping processes and concepts, and we've got to be careful with clear definitions. And the first step is, who is your customer? So in the case of medical device or pharmaceutical, you know, one of the issues is the clarity around the customer. You know, originally the supply chain sold to the doctor, and now the question with affordable health care is, how does this change for the patient? How does it change for the hospital with what's happening with the global procurement organizations? And also For this particular supply chain, should the goal be efficient sickness, which is often what we see in emergency rooms where we're checked in and checked out, or should the focus be on the patient with wellness? And so when we think about wellness, we have a whole different perspective of what we sense and how we treat the customer and what the outcomes are. And so the first question that I ask people in driving customer-centric journey is, who's your customer and what's the goal? And that may sound simple, but it's not. And so let's take the consumer supply chain, which Mark's part of. We had the old view of the customer-centric was, did we ship the order on time to the retailer? And now the view is all the way to the basket or all the way to the usage. And so as we look at the supply chain definition and we look at fulfillment at the moments of truth, we've got to own new signals like what's happening in out of stocks. And most people don't know what's the root issue of out of stocks, but if we're going to own the supply chain all the way to the shopper and we're going to look at outcomes, we've got to own channel inventories and own channel stocks. Now, as we think about doing this, one of the things that's easy for us to work on internally is cost to serve methodologies, which allows us to look at what are the relative costs to serve each of the customers. And customer-centric doesn't mean that we do whatever the customer wants. It means that we make choices around what makes the most sense for the customer. And many of the companies in Mark's peer group in consumer and household products have been doing a lot of analysis around cost to serve and working with retailers around the relative cost to serve. And this is an example of retailers being compared on warehousing, order management, transportation, and sales and merchandising requirements. And what can happen here is a data-driven discussion with a retailer, which in this case it's Wakefern, which has an issue with order management, and the ability to do cost to serve really highlights where the opportunity is so that we can focus on a specific customer, not just talk in generalities. So this is a technique that helps in driving customer-centric discussions. The other thing is, as we look at scorecards and we look at retail scorecards in Mark's industry, we've had scorecards for about 15 years. On average, companies have 2 scorecards, and unfortunately, the scorecards have only helped us with on-time delivery. We've not really made as much progress on advanced ship notices or ASNs or compliance or chargebacks or deductions. And the retailers feel that we haven't really driven a lot of excitement at the shelf. So while we talk about scorecards, scorecards do not equal customer-centric. It's far more detailed than that. So as I think about customer-centric and I think about characteristics, I think about clarity of purpose for the consumer or the customer and clear definition of who the customer is. I see the company taking ownership of the channel, whether it's out of stocks or cost to serve, really looking at the combination of reliability and excitement. I see segmentation and the tie of segmentation to policy and execution. Often I'll see companies will come up with customer strategies, but they don't tie it to execution. And I think that's the secret and one of the things I want you to listen for in Mark's presentation. They have cost to serve discussions with data-driven outcomes and clear focus on outcomes. And there's clear alignment between operations and commercial teams. The closer the alignment between these teams, the easier it is for companies to become customer-centric and also drive outside-in processes. They use scorecards, but it's focused on the relationship, just not on on-time shipments. And the processes are built on channel data and implemented outside in. And the processes are hands-free with reliable orders, and there's cross-functional listening. Now, when we think about cross-functional listening, that's the mining of unstructured text to be able to look at social sentiment so we could see what is the response of the shopper or the customer to really be able to get at customer sentiment. So Mark, these are kind of my 10 belief statements about customer-centric. Let's go through your case study, and then let's come back and talk about what you've learned in this journey.
That'd be great, Laura.
So here's your first slide. Tell us about building the customer-centric supply chain at Clorox.
That's great. So again, I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the things we've done, some of the success we've had, learnings, and where we're headed. And as I go through today's presentation and telling our story, I'm really looking forward to hearing your comments, questions, and even ideas for us to even be more successful in this journey. So next slide.
There's a little bit of lag here, so this is about Clorox.
Right. So let me just share a little bit of history with everyone. So as a company, we actually got our start in 1913. Actually, what happened was 5 businessmen in Oakland, California, put in $500 each and formed what was called the Electro-Alkaline Company. And obviously, we've grown and changed quite a bit. And as an organization, we've seen a lot of change in the marketplace, and our portfolio has been adjusted or evolved quite a bit over the past century. But let me just give you a quick perspective on Clorox now. We're a $5.8 billion company, and we have approximately 8,000 outstanding employees worldwide. We do manufacture in 24 countries, and that's really a combination of our own facilities, but also third-party manufacturers. And as a company, very strong operating presence in the Americas. As you can see, most of our business is primarily in the U.S., about 80%, but international is the fastest growing business segment for Clorox. 6 R&D facilities positioned around the world. We are a publicly traded company, and we sell products in more than 100 countries. Okay, next slide. So here's just a view of our leading brands. Hopefully you recognize our diverse portfolio of brands we have. What's exciting for us is that 80% of our products are either number 1 or number 2 in their categories. So we're feeling really good about the success we're having today in the marketplace. But as you look at our portfolio overall, many of the products we have actually joined the Clorox family through acquisition. Products like our Glad bags and wraps, our Fresh Step cat litter, and our Burt's Bees natural personal care products. Okay, next slide. So as I think about our consumer base, again, very challenging environment. I suspect many of you are experiencing the same thing. But as I try to think about kind of where the challenges are, these 6 popped out to me. The first is many of our consumers for our products are very value conscious. So we've got to find a way to give them the right value proposition as they vote with their wallets. Aging population in the U.S. As everyone knows, that's a rapidly growing segment. And as we think about that demographic, these folks have a lot less space in their homes for product storage, and we need to make sure that the packages we're offering are smaller, easy to open, and easy to use. Technology. Obviously, advances around the Internet of Things, technology is just exploding, and our consumers have an incredible amount of data they can access. And what we're finding is our consumers, they want to understand our packaging materials, what goes into our products, our supply chain, and our social responsibility. So we've got to find a way to make sure the information gets communicated to them and in a way that's easy for them to access and see. Multiculturalism requires the right product designs, and we need to make sure our products are matched very closely with what that culture requires. Interesting for us and for global companies, you're probably seeing this also, but the consumers outside the U.S. have very different needs. So for example, in Latin America, many of the consumers there actually prefer products in pouches, which we don't currently offer in the U.S., but as we think about those needs, we've got to deliver those. And obviously, the last one, shopping patterns and preferences continue to change and become more and more diverse over time. So as you think about where the consumer is buying products, it's in brick and mortar stores, it's online, it's in specialty stores, and as a company, we've got to make sure our products are in locations where they're actually shopping. Okay, next slide. So that was the consumer, but as we think about the marketplace, obviously our retailers, our customers are looking for lower capital, continuing looking at customization, differentiation, and improved profitability. So for us, that's about being sure we're responsive, we're agile, and we're very efficient in our operations. And then obviously the new channels and store formats, we think about e-commerce, obviously. We think about companies like Target, other retailers that now are putting in place urban stores. We think about Walmart going from bigger box to smaller stores. We think about what's in the stores themselves, changing formats. As we think about these different changing needs, obviously our supply chains and our fulfillment models have to be matched to those channels and store formats. Yeah, we talked about Amazon. I think everyone knows their growth. And actually for Clorox, this is one of our fastest growing businesses, so we need to be successful there. And as I think about new channels, folks don't know that Clorox has actually entered the healthcare space. We've got a series of brands there, and we recently acquired Renew Health product line, which is involved in digestive health. So again, a lot of different changes happening in the marketplace. We've got to make sure we've got supply chains and the capability to support it. Okay, next slide. So as Laura talked about, starting at the basket, that's what we do at Clorox. It's really the consumer, and for us, it's the end customer, and in our case, the consumer. And what we're all about is we call being consumer-centric. And actually, as a company, let me just share some of the things we're doing. Actually, we started an initiative and process we call put in place a growth culture. And actually, one of the 5 calls to action in growth culture as a company is around putting the consumer first. And let me just share a few thoughts on how we define it, what it means to us. So again, the consumer, as I said, it starts with them. It begins with a basket, and what they need is the inspiration for everything we do, and that's how we do our work. It's through that lens. One of the things that we're trying to also orchestrate as an organization is, as we have the meetings, we have the conversations, we have the discussions within Clorox, that basically we start and stop each meeting with a consumer-related topic. Also, I think another thing exciting for me is the fact that we are looking for ways for our employees to be more comfortable and be more interactive with the consumer, whether it's where they're shopping, in conversations outside the office, but making sure that there's a way that they're tapping into their knowledge, their needs, their insights, their possibilities around products, and doing that very well. As we think about scorecards, we think about measures for success for the company. It's really measured from the consumer's perspective. And again, as we think about the customized responsive to their needs, we're doing that through our offerings, we're doing that through our messaging, and we're doing it through our packaging. So again, the consumer is ultimately kind of where our focus is, and doing that well, I think will allow us to continue to win and be more successful in the marketplace. Okay, so this actually is a quick visual on kind of the building blocks of our journey, kind of how we got started, what are the pieces, how they fit, and how it all comes together. So if you start at the bottom left, actually about 7 years ago, supply chain and sales within Clorox got together and formed a partnership whereby together we shaped what this journey is going to look like. We agreed upon the capabilities we were going to institute, and we've been working jointly connected now for 7 years, and that relationship, I think, has been a foundational element to success, because without these two organizations together and coupled, you're not going to advance as far as you'd like. Also, I think Laura talked about it in her slide, but actually we've done a very nice job segmenting our retailer base into 4 categories, and I think based on segmentation, it's allowed us to better focus. So as we think about the services we provide, the type of support we give them, the resourcing that's involved, we use that segmentation methodology to guide us in that area. One of the most important foundational capabilities is voice of the customer. I'm going to talk about that in an upcoming slide, but you've got to get that right. And it's not just voice of the customer for your external retailers, for your consumers, for your suppliers. It's also voice of the customer for your internal partners. And then finally, value chain segmentation, and I'll talk about that. That's another foundational process that we've put in place for the organization. And it's really about the process, methodology, and capability for translating the requirements of our product and market and business into the right supply chain constructs that are tailored to support specific needs. And I think about the next couple rows, the elements, fulfillment models. Again, if you look at our portfolio, to look at the channels we're in now, the channels we're stepping into, the fulfillment models are becoming more and more complex and more difficult. So we've got to have the right route to market models to support that. The middle box, select customization, postponement. I think everyone knows personalization is growing at a very rapid rate. So we've got to find ways to customize, differentiate our products to support the needs of the consumer. And postponement, or as we call late-stage differentiation, is a way to get at that. Our manufacturing operations space, we've put a lot of energy and effort around shortening our run sizes, doing more changeovers, having inventory be more flexible. Years ago, it was more around OEE, overall operational effectiveness, but we're now saying, hey, that was a good measure years ago, but now the focus is around agility and flexibility. In the upper left box, again, collaboration. We do believe, and we're seeing and actually capitalizing on opportunities working directly with our value chain partners. And obviously, the S&OP process, you've got to get demand management and planning capability right. As a company, we're probably not as far along there as we need to be, but it's been a focus area for the last several years, and I think we're making excellent progress along those lines. Next slide. As I mentioned before, voice of the customer is foundational and absolutely critical to success. This is just a quick visual on a model that we employ. Again, use it externally, use it internally, but it's really making sure that we hear and understand our customer's voice. And as I said before, it's about our consumers, it's our shoppers, retailers, suppliers, even competition, and as I said, internally. And we believe that employing this virtuous cycle, and we know this works well, and we're finding great value with it. So basically, you start, obviously, you ask, you listen, you learn, you understand what the strategic direction is from the customer, their priorities, objectives, kind of what they need, capabilities today and the future, and then have a really candid, honest conversation around gaps they see between what they're expecting and what Clorox is delivering today. Again, then we go off and we kind of model, do some analytics, assess kind of what needs to take place. We bring it to life through a planning process. And then one of the most important steps is after it's activated, it's put in place, we're seeing value, you've got to go back and have the ongoing conversation in a regular cadence with your customer. So you keep refreshing those needs, you keep assessing, you keep putting actions into place, and you keep this virtual cycle moving forward. Okay, next slide. So the thing about our experience over the last several years, there's actually some techniques that we've employed as a company that I found have been really successful, in particular with our retailers. The first is supply chain advisory services. As you remember, on an earlier slide, we talked about the fact that we've segmented our suppliers, or not our suppliers, our customers, retailers, and based on that segmentation, where they fall, it'll sort of correlate to the service we give them. But basically, we've looked at these four blocks together, and basically, there's four elements. It's about upper left, base operations, doing the blocking and tackling well. It's about proactive analytics, which for us is scorecarding, and proactive problem solving, improvement services, which means for us things like store displays, events, on-shelf availability, also improving sales and profitability. And upper right is working together to really drive joint value creation through major initiatives. So what we're doing here is basically take the voice of the customer information, hear what's important to them, look at where they are in our segmentation model, and then figuring out which of these four areas that we advance with them so that at the end of the day, we are trusted partners. Hey, another technique that we've been using that's been effective is we happen to call it agile inventory, but what this really means is having the right products in the stores at the right level across the retailer network, and also then back into our supply chain. So again, stepping back, thinking about product velocity, turns, movement, doing this together, and coming up with the right balance. So that's had some great results for us. Another technique we found is value stream mapping light. So for the lean purists that might be on the phone, Obviously, value stream mapping is a very involved, detailed, multi-day process. But in this case, what we found a way to do is basically create a light version whereby in a 4-hour event at a retailer, given that we've done some pre-work ahead of time, we actually sit down together. We look at kind of the process from start to end, and then we look at kind of the pain points. We look at where waste exists. We look at where there's opportunities to reduce lead time and ways to be more responsive and cost effective. And then from that work, we agree, hey, here's some activities we can work on together that will improve growth opportunity and efficiency for both organizations. So we find that to be a very, very effective technique. And finally, one that we've employed is we call it one supply chain view. But what that's really about is about thinking about both organizations together as one virtual company. So rather, not just Clorox and a retailer, for example, but it's basically this is one entity. How would we make design choices in that context? How do we think about profitability, efficiency, overall effectiveness? Because we're really now understanding the total end-to-end cost to serve through that work stream. So again, 4 techniques work pretty well for us, and we continue to deploy these with the right retailers in the right way. Okay, next slide. As I mentioned before, one of the foundational elements in the journey is value chain segmentation. And we actually put this methodology in place about 5 years ago, and it works. I think Laura was involved in helping us shape this, some other groups, but actually this is one of the most effective techniques we employ as a company for translating voice of the customer, translating business requirements, translating what those needs are into the right supply chain construct. So let me just talk about how it works. So basically, the inputs to this are, on the far left, you can see what's happening with our products. What's the 5-year view of our portfolio? What are new products coming into play? What are new capabilities that we need to have and the timing for those? What's the strategic role for our products? And what's the top priority for our product line? Is it about responsiveness and speed? Is it about efficiency and cost? Is it about agility and the balance between the two? Then we look at our market and channels. What's happening there? We think about promotions. We think about customization. We think about the growth by product year over year. We think about the predictability of our product lines in that space. Then the customer consumer, the voice of the customer, we take a lot of information there about what we hear. And then we also incorporate another key input. We happen to call it, internally, we call it the business unit fact base. But what that really is, it's a view on kind of the learnings we've had for the last 12 months. It's about trends happening within the marketplace and across the industry. It's about financial performance targets we have. It's about emerging opportunities we're seeing as a company. And it's about competitive intelligence and what our competitors are doing. And then we also have a technique I find is very effective. It's called the strategic view by product. And actually, the acronym for that is we call it our 6-box model. But what this really does is the view is it's basically economic profit along the y-axis. It's about growth potential along the x-axis. And within that, we've got 6 boxes where we actually put and designate every product in the Clorox portfolio. And this isn't the brand itself. This is the actual product. Because what we'll see is different products within the same brand have different strategic importance to the organization. So again, all that input comes together, and then we actually then channel that, and we actually then decide which of the 4 value chain constructs or types that's best suited to support that. We've got one we call actually disruptive innovation, and that's actually about new products, very different changes and items that don't fit within our core operating capabilities today. But within that particular value chain, you can see what's important and what we emphasize. So here, it's about speed and service. Again, new products, new designs, critical to be on shelf. Don't know a lot about these products, and we need to make sure that we've got a supply chain that focuses on speed and service. Now again, cost is important, needs to be good, but that's not the emphasis. Then we've got a supply chain, which it says be there, promotion related. So again, businesses and needs where a lot of events, a lot of customization, a lot of displays, things that we need to be responsive there. And again, speed and service, again, have to be world-class at that, but cost now comes into play. It's important. And then we get to a third value chain type. We call it balancing response and efficiency. So again, that's really thinking about products that are high margin, critical for success, very profitable, and drive that element of the company. And we need to make sure that we're always on shelf for these. So this one really, it's about balancing speed and cost, obviously, but service plays a really important role because you've got to be on shelf. And finally, product lines where it's about efficiency and low cost. Minimal change, not a lot of innovation, not a lot of customization. So here, again, emphasizing the cost aspect. And what's great about this particular process is this isn't a supply chain thing within Clorox. This is a business activity that everyone gets involved. We work together, and we do this, and we view it as a team sport. Okay, next slide. So again, a lot of information here, but the message with this is as we think about the supply chain constructs, the four that we just talked about, what we've done as an organization is within each of these elements you see on this page, we've actually put together a view on what the capability looks like. And obviously, as you think about the different supply chains, one is focused on primarily responsiveness and speed versus one focused on cost and efficiency. What capabilities you have in each of these needs to change. I mean, obviously, you look at, for example, unit cost. Obviously, low-cost supply chain, it's of utmost importance. You think about sort of capacity utilization. Hey, in supply chains that are more focused on disruptive innovation, promotion-oriented, you're going to need probably a little more capacity to support the needs. Collaboration, information sharing for businesses or supply chains where speed and responsiveness are so key that obviously the communication channels, the sharing, the visibility, transparency, the data and information becomes really important. So again, as an organization, we've kind of articulated and defined what these look like within each of the four supply chains. Okay, next slide. So just quickly, kind of what have we learned in this journey to date? Obviously, I've said it several times before, but voice of the customer, again, cornerstone for success. You've got to do that and do that well. Value chain segmentation, we just talked about that a few minutes ago. You need to look at that in the context of business objectives and company strategy to get it to really to stick and have it truly become a team sport where it's supply chain, marketing, sales, R&D, IT, everyone playing together in that arena. Again, value chain segmentation is just one piece of an overall process to create the right supply chain strategy. Again, one of the things we found is, I didn't talk about it today, but it's about having the right leaders with the right mindset to win. And actually talent development is something within Clorox I feel we do exceptionally well. And obviously we didn't have time to cover it today, but building the leaders of the future at all levels and having people that think and act with an end-to-end mindset is important. We like to use a term, it's really creating, we call it supply chain general managers, which are folks that actually have a great understanding of the marketplace and the competition, understand the external world and industry trends, and can take that outside-in view and then apply it to the work they're doing today. And actually this development process is not just for our senior managers and directors and VPs, it's across the entire supply chain organization. So it's our supervisors, our junior managers on up. So we're really building that base of talent to be successful for the long term. Early on in this process, and specifically around value chain segmentation, what we learned was it's really important to use the terminology and language that our business leaders understand. We in Clorox have a tendency to use supply chain speak within our own organization, but recognizing that's not as easily understood with our business leaders. So making sure you've got the right sort of lexicon, the right verbiage, the right vocabulary as you're engaging with them. And again, what's exciting about this work around supply chain design for us, it's not a one and done process. It's a process that we refresh every year. As we get into the company's planning cycle, we look at what the requirements are, we look at voice of the customer, we look at those inputs I shared on a previous slide, and then we look at the supply chain we have, and is it still correctly matched those needs? If not, what needs to change? And then we start a process whereby we fill those gaps to have the supply chain well tailored to what those needs are. As I said before, this is a team sport. All the functions play as we do this work. So finally, where are we going? What's our direction? So again, we've actually been working over the last 3 or 4 months to be thinking about what are the next wave of capabilities and roadmap to deliver the company's 2020 growth strategy. As I mentioned before, supply chain and sales got together to put together the initial roadmap to become more demand-driven, become more consumer-centric. But now we're saying, okay, based on what's happening and the changes and challenges we have, what are the right capabilities, what work should we be doing, and how should we put that together into a plan so we know what our focus is for the next 12 months, the next several years, and the next years out to 2020 and beyond. I mentioned before, again, a lot of work around embedding put the consumer first traits, behaviors into our workforce as we move forward. As I mentioned, it was 1 of 5 calls to action, and here, as you can see, the other 5 that we're driving to really embed a growth culture within Clorox as a whole. It's about thinking boldly. It's about acting like an owner, as if your own name was on the product or service that the consumer is acquiring. It's about being curious, experimentation, trying new things. It's about embracing change. And where you see change is valuable to the success of the company, but also to the success of your career. And finally, just continuing employing the voice of the customer methodology with both our external and internal customers to define requirements, create plans, and then continue that refresh virtual cycle process as we move forward. So again, that's just a quick overview of our story, things we're doing. So I guess I'll turn it back to Laura for questions, comments, further discussion.
Hey, Mark, we've got some great questions. The first question is the voice of the customer. What tools or techniques are you doing? Is this social sentiment? Is it call center? Is it Facebook? Is it interviews with retailers? How are you getting at that data?
That's a great question. So it's actually many of the above. It's the face-to-face conversations with the retailer at the table. It's about information we're getting from our consumer base through various sources, social media and such. So it comes from a wide range of vehicles or avenues to get that information. And again, obviously from a social media perspective and unstructured data, we're continuing to evolve there and try to get better. But that's a critical source of information as we think about the needs.
Do you do cross-functional listening with that data, or does the digital marketing team synthesize the data? How does that data actually get to the supply chain?
Yeah, so the way it works for us is our digital marketing group actually takes information, coalesces it, brings it to life, and then shares it with supply chain. But we are actually looking for ways within supply chain to be proactive around sense and respond. So not just waiting for our digital marketing experts to bring it together and synthesize it, but ways that we can be seeing things faster, sooner, through the avenues we have in connections with our consumer.
Well, great. And we're actually going to be showcasing some analytics at the upcoming Global Summit that might help you there and might help other people that are on the phone. Now, there's a question about product lifecycle profitability management and how you look at the product complexity and product lifecycle and, your 6-box model. Are you doing that at the item level or at the brand level? Can you talk a little bit about managing item complexity and the level of granularity that you do that?
That's great. So to the original part of your question around product life cycle, actually I didn't have a slide in this deck, but one of the things we do is we actually correlate a product's life cycle to the type of supply chain it needs to be in. And what I'm saying there is that something very new in the life cycle, we don't know much about it, very unpredictable, demand is all over the board. We want a supply chain similar to the one we talked about earlier around disruptive innovation. so that we're very responsive. We've got a high degree of flexibility. We can make sure that we're on shelf as we need to. And then as you move up that life cycle curve, you build more scale, you build more predictability, and so forth. Then you start to transition into supply chains that better balance response and efficiency. And then you get to the very top. The product's fairly mature. Then you're looking at being more efficient, low cost. And then as you think about the tail end of a product's life cycle, then it's probably about balancing response and efficiency, because you want to have the right value proposition to the consumer, but you also want to be on shelf so that the product's there when they need it. And then the second part of your question dealt with our 6-box model, and that's actually done at the item level. So, for example, within Clorox, we've got different brands. Let's take one, water filtration. I think you might have seen in the earlier slide that Brita is one of our product lines. Well, within that particular brand we've got pitchers, we've got filters, and we also offer a faucet mount unit. And within that 6-box model, each of those products is in a different box in the model, which then translates to a different supply chain construct to best support that particular product line.
I think that's a great answer. And, one of the questions that we have from Louie is, how did you get all the areas in your company to do this, right? I mean, people struggle, the supply chain team may think this is the right kind of stuff to do, but it's hard to build a guiding coalition. Any thoughts around that, particularly around customer segmentation and complexity and analysis and voice of the customer? These are sometimes hard things for other supply chain leaders to get started.
Yeah, so as I think back to really getting serious about becoming demand-driven and consumer-centric, what I think one of the critical moments there was when our head of supply chain and our head of sales came together and said, look, the only way this is going to work is that this has to be a true partnership, that the roadmap we put together, the capabilities that we say are important, the work we do has to be jointly shared, jointly owned, and jointly driven. So I think that was a critical and really important first step. Without those two parties or two functions together throughout the entire journey, you're not going to advance as far as you'd like. And then the whole area around value chain segmentation, what actually helped us there was our COO at the time recognized how value chain segmentation and basically linking business unit requirements with the right supply chain construct, that person could see the advantage. And actually what helped us early on is we did a lot of education with our business unit leaders, our GMs, telling the story or explaining the methodology and process in the direct context of their business so that they could see that, hey, this particular business or this particular product has these needs. A product might have a lot of innovation, a lot of change, a lot of differentiation. Here's the right supply chain you want to have, and with that supply chain design, we can help you deliver what your business objectives are, whether it's top-line growth, profitability, gross margin, combination of all. So I think having them see what this does and directly correlate to what is on their long-range plan is important and very helpful.
I think those are all wonderful insights, Mark. And Mark, you're going to be a presenter for us at the Supply Chain Insights Global Summit on September 6th through the 9th. And for people that are not aware of the summit, we're going to be focusing on supply chains to admire winners like Mark and Clorox, and we're going to celebrate with teams all around the world. It'll be live streamed, so if you can't make it in person, then you can watch it, and you can include your entire organization to watch it. We'll be sending out information to everyone so that they can watch it and celebrate. We'll also be talking about changing economies and changing times as we look at Supply Chain 2030. We've got a great economist who's going to be talking about those forecasts. And We're also going to challenge people to take the digital pivot. We'll be showcasing 20 different types of analytics, things like non-relational, Hadoop, cognitive learning, artificial intelligence, machine learning, so that people can look at that and also look at Internet of Things. Intel's bringing a demo to talk about innovation of the edge and what streaming data architectures look like. And then we have a couple of case studies around continuous improvement and transformation, and we have Doris Kearns-Goodwin who's going to be talking about leadership and really situational leadership. And those of you may know Doris the best from her writing on the Team of Rivals about Lincoln's cabinet, and she's going to talk about how presidents really don't know what the future is and how they drive leadership. And it's great case studies that she's put on a podcast for us around how we tell stories and how we build guiding coalitions. And I think all of that is really important for us to think about as we get into Supply Chain 2030. So this global summit is designed for supply chain leaders. It's a small event. It'll be held at the Phoenician in Scottsdale, Arizona on September 7th through the 9th. And we also will be showcasing at this summit some training that we've been building with CorpU. I will actually have these available for people to look at, and one of the courses that we have available is the customer-centric supply chain journey. So Mark, I'll be interested in your feedback of how you think we've done on that course, which really gets into techniques around how do you build customer-centric segmentation, how do you tie that to policy, and also the difference between customer-centric and market-driven or demand-driven, which gets to this model. Because while people think about customer-centric as being the same thing as demand-driven, they're different concepts, but they have overlaps and outside-in processes. So we're going to be challenging people through these classes to really think about next-generation supply chain processes, and we'll have a small room where people can go through the classes and give us your feedback and sign up for the classes. And we also have a survey in the field that we'll be sharing in an October research report on developing customer-centric supply chains. So if you think back to those 10 tenets that I talked about that are the characteristics we think of customer-centric supply chain, we'll be testing where people are on that. And the initial response to the survey has been very high, but copy down this URL. Of course, as we do surveys, we always keep them confidential and only report the data in aggregate. And we hope to be able to publish this report in October to help people around some of the issues they have around alignment or segmentation or looking at item complexity or looking at cost to serve. And we'll be showcasing that data later in the year with reports and what we're doing. And I want to encourage people to follow us as a company. This is the way you can engage with us. We publish all of our reports on the Supply Chain Insights site. We will publish this webinar openly for you to share, and we also are very active on LinkedIn and in our community called Beat Fusion. We're currently going through some updates in Beat Fusion for all of the supply chain metrics that matter work. So if you're looking for benchmark data for financial comparison, check out Beat Fusion and also engage in a two-way dialogue. And this is the way that you can connect with me. So Allison, I'll pass it back to you.
Great. Thanks, Laura. And thank you, Mark, for the presentation today, and thanks for all of you that were able to join us. I'm going to just reiterate a few quick things that Laura has already mentioned. One, make sure that you know that we will send out the slides and the recording link to everyone that came to the webinar, so keep an eye out for that. If you don't get it, please reach out to me directly, and I will make sure that you get a copy of the slides and the recording link. As Laura mentioned, we also encourage you to engage with us on social media. We do send out a lot of opinion and breaking reports and insights from the research there, so just do follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn. And as well, sign up for our newsletter on our site. We send out all of our information and event information once a month on the newsletter page. So thanks everyone for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next month on our webinar wrapping up the Supply Chains to Admire conference on September 17th. So thanks everyone, and have a great afternoon.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, thank you.